Pope Leo XIV stood before Anglicans at the Vatican and said something extraordinary. We are already one. Not we hope to be one, already one. This was not mere diplomacy, it was a theological claim. And for Catholics attached to the traditional Latin Mass, it raises a devastating question. If unity is already affirmed with Anglicans, who reject papal authority, whose sacraments the Church considers defective, then what about Catholics who are in full communion, who profess the entirety of Catholic doctrine, who celebrate a rite canonized by centuries of use, bound to Catholic faith through the ancient principle lex orandi, lex credendi, the law of prayer is the law of belief? How is it that those outside the Church are told we are already one, while those inside are told their liturgical heritage is divisive and must be suppressed? Let's look at the facts. In October 2025, Pope Leo permitted Cardinal Raymond Burke to celebrate the traditional Latin Mass in St. Peter's Basilica. Traditionalists felt hope. Organizers called it a message to bishops who had restricted the ancient rite. But that same month, the Dicastery for Divine Worship merely restated Traditionis Custodes, Pope Francis's 2021 motu proprio that declared the Reformed liturgy the unique expression of the Roman Rite. No movement, no concession. In February 2026, the Bishop of Charlotte, North Carolina, reduced Latin Mass availability to one small chapel from 4 parishes, despite overwhelming demand. The faithful were told their spiritual home was no longer welcome. Now look at the ecumenical front. King Charles III prayed with Pope Leo in the Sistine Chapel, the first time since the Reformation. The Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls hosted a historic service. Vatican officials spoke of a closeness that already exists. Cardinal Kurt Koch has emphasized Pope Leo's commitment to ecumenical dialogue. The Pope quoted St. Augustine, "Although we are many, in the one, that is Christ, we are one." But here is the painful question. If we are already one with those outside the Church, why are those fully inside treated as suspect? If ecumenical unity embraces external differences, why is internal fidelity punished? Joseph Shaw, chairman of the Latin Mass Society, put it simply, "We're not looking for any kind of victory, just to be allowed to remain a tiny part of the Church, contributing in our own way." Yet in many dioceses, even that tiny place is being closed. The sociologist Stephen Bullivant documents the collapse of Catholic practice. Mass attendance hovers around 15 to 20% in America. In Britain, only 13% of cradle Catholics still attend weekly. Yet traditional communities are growing. Young people are drawn to the old rite. The Chart's pilgrimage draws tens of thousands. There's life there. Pope Leo recently acknowledged that when the newer form is celebrated casually, Catholics naturally look to the older form for the sense of prayer and mystery they seek. He proposed a hopeful vision. If the Mass of Paul VI is celebrated faithfully, the spiritual difference need not be so great. But hope requires action. It requires bishops who see traditional Catholics not as problems, but as sheep to shepherd. The claim we are already one with Anglicans reflects Christ's prayer that they may all be one in John 17:21. But that same prayer applies within the Church. Those who have remained faithful to Rome, who accept her authority, who simply want to worship according to ancient rites, they too must be treated as one. Cardinal Burke has warned that respect for divine authority has suffered because of hasty and unwise decisions. Bishop Athanasius Schneider notes that traditional communities are witnessing an upsurge in vocations. The test of unity is not how we treat those far away, it is how we treat those closest to us, the ones who have never left, the ones who kneel in the pews and simply ask to worship as their grandparents did. If we are already one means anything, it must mean that too.